Well, hello there, you wonderful person. Welcome to another episode of Storytime. On today's episode, we're once again going into the deep wilderness with 10 more exciting and suspenseful stories to listen to. What sorts of adventures will we encounter today? Well, that's for you to find out. If you haven't done it already, then make sure you're following me on my Instagram and my Twitter. There I go ahead and upload extra content that I normally don't put up here. And as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Here we go. Number 1. When I was in college, something I really enjoyed doing was going out into the wilderness. There was just something about escaping the normal day in town and being surrounded by nothing but woods. It really did make you feel at peace. I was spending a lot of time studying for exams, and I thought as a great way to get some fresh air, I would invite my girlfriend over. We would then decide to go on a 3-day road trip. We both didn't have school on Friday, so on Thursday, we spent the day getting our things ready. On Friday morning, we end up driving north, heading towards a national park. On our way there, we drove by many towns and wonderful vistas. Another thing I did forget to mention was that we loved exploring locations that were abandoned. There was just this mystery to these places that we really found interesting. Learning the stories of these places and being able to visit them, it was awesome. That was actually another plan we had. As we were making our way to a national park, we ended up stopping about an hour before in another set of woods. The reason we chose to stop here was because every time we had driven in this area, we'd always noticed this little abandoned town. It was sort of just out here in the deep wilderness. We always wanted to check it out, but we never did have the time to do so. Now, with all the time in the world, this would be one of our first stops. Looking back, I really do wish we would have just continued on. As a side note, we've been exploring many places for many years now. Not once, and I mean not once at all, did we encounter anyone or anything. We got off the interstate and drove down this lonely road for a few miles. Out here, there was nothing but wilderness everywhere. I don't think many people come out here as the roads looked old and unattended. Eventually, we did arrive in this little area that was essentially just leftover buildings from a town. I forgot the name of the town, but all you could see here were a few homes and what looked to be a leftover convenience store. We drove around first just to make sure we hadn't seen anyone, and from there, we get out of the car and start making our way around. We take some pictures and explore the town itself, but of course, I get the brilliant idea to go inside one of the homes. It was a large home. It almost resembled one of those old Western mansions. My girlfriend Zoe was a little bit nervous at first, but I told her it was fine. The reason she was nervous was she told me she saw what looked to be a shadow of a person. She said she saw it behind one of the buildings. Once again, I just told her she was seeing things. After all, we saw no other cars here, and this place was pretty much as quiet as it could get. Zoe eventually calmed down and we entered this old abandoned mansion house. It was really nice in there. Though there wasn't really much left, you could use your imagination and begin to wonder what happened here. A lot of these old towns have been left over since the early 1900s, so you can imagine all the history. We go up some old stairs and now we're exploring the second floor. When we're on the second floor, we started hearing the sounds of footsteps downstairs. Remember, this was an old home, so immediately I try to explain it away as our own footsteps. We both stood there close to one another and listened. There was nothing at first, but then we once again heard the footsteps, followed by the sound of a car engine. It was obvious now. Someone else was inside the building, and most likely outside too. We weren't exactly sure who was there, or how many people were downstairs, but we decided to come up with a plan. Zoe happened to walk over to the window, and that's when she froze. I was curious what had got into her, but now I was seeing it too. Outside, parked around the house, was a dark, unmarked van. It seems like our new friends were the ones that brought in the van. In our time exploring this town, we hadn't seen anyone at all, let alone a car of any sort. We couldn't just go downstairs, as they would have heard us or even seen us too. Thankfully for us, there was a little ledge you can climb onto that was next to the window. From there, you can climb down to the bottom, and we could get to our car. In us trying to make a decision, I accidentally tripped over a small little table. I guess I was the clumsy one. With that noise, we had to act fast, because we ended up hearing the sounds of footsteps, and now they were going up the stairs. Hey, who's up there? No one else is allowed to be here. With little time left, we quickly get out the window and hide. We can now hear as there are people searching around the room. I took about 5 seconds of a look through the window, and I could see that they each had a light on them. 2 of them were holding baseball bats, and the other appeared to be holding some sort of blade. Check every corner. Make sure no one else is here. No one is to leave this house until we make sure we find the source of the noise. With all the noise they were making, me and Zoe now take the opportunity to go down to the front yard. From there, we're making a mad dash towards our car. With the 2 of us running, I can now hear the sound of one of them saying, "There they are. Get them." We had been spotted. We don't look back, and we waste 0 time getting back to our car. By the time we get to the car and take off, we see them get in their van and start driving towards us. As we're once again going down this lonely road, we can see a trail of dust heading towards us. It looked like they weren't going to let us get away that easily. Eventually, we did make it to the interstate, but we now noticed as they seemed to put their brakes on and stop completely. The last thing I remember seeing them doing was turning their van around and going back the way they had arrived. In the end, we decided to stop our little vacation short and went back home instead. I never did look more into that place, and we haven't gone exploring in abandoned places since. I'm not sure what they were doing in that house to begin with. I have my ideas, but I'm just glad we weren't there to find out. If anybody has any ideas, then please let me know. Number 2. At the time this story takes place, I just moved out from home. I'm going to tell the entire story in its entirety, so that I don't skip out any important details. I was living in Wasila, Alaska at the time, and I'd been trying to find a place to stay for quite some time now. I ended up finding a place that was outside of town, and more closer to the mountains. Pretty much, it was out in the Alaskan wilderness. The closest neighbors were at least 10 minutes away. After that, the town is another 20 minutes away after that. Growing up, I never was really a fan of being around so much traffic and noise, so for me, this was a perfect change. I was still in college at the time, but I had decided to take online courses. This, of course, meant that I wouldn't have to deal with actually going to campus. Well, sort of. The only times I would have to go to campus were when I would have to take exams. It just so happened that on one of the days I was going to take an exam, I ended up having this experience. This was in December, and for those who live in Alaska know all too well, it's pretty dark at this time of the year. I will mention very quickly that I have a small dog named Harold. He pretty much keeps an eye on the house for me. One thing I had started to notice around my property was my dog Harold was acting weird. When I had gone on walks with him in town, he was friendly with everybody else, but I could tell that he could sense the bad ones. He would usually start growling at them and look at the person with mean eyes. Well, for the last few nights, Harold seems to have his attention occupied by something in the nearby wilderness. I just dismissed it as some sort of animal in there. So on this Friday afternoon, I take Harold with me and we make our way to the car. As we're doing so, Harold starts growling once again. It seems like he's trying to get my attention on something. I did find it weird, but I told him to calm down. Soon, I saw what looked to be the shadow of somebody walking amongst the trees. Harold started barking, and I'll admit, I got sort of nervous. Once again, I tell myself it was nothing. Guess what happened next? Out of all the days, it seemed that my car wasn't working. Oh boy, wonderful. Thankfully, I do have my friend Alexis, who was living near campus. I ended up calling her. Hey, Alexis, it's me. So you'll never guess, but it looks like my car isn't starting. I was wondering, could you pick me up? If you do, I could buy you some food or something. Seriously? Wow, that's terrible. Sure, I could pick you up if you'd like. You have to promise me one thing. You have to bring Harold with you. He's so sweet. I'll look after him while you take your final. Then we can go get something to eat. Awesome, it worked out perfectly. Alexis could look after Harold and I could take my final in peace. It should have been a normal afternoon, but it would change. Just don't forget the way Harold was acting and the shadow I had seen earlier. We go back inside and wait for Alexis to arrive. Thankfully, my final wasn't for another couple of hours. I just wanted to go earlier to study, but I tried studying while I waited for her. She soon arrives and we end up leaving. As we're making our way down the private road, me and Alexis see what looks to be a person walking down the entrance to my property. I wasn't sure if it was one of my neighbors since they had a hoodie on, but we did find it strange to see somebody out here. He almost resembled the same shape I had seen earlier. Anyways, I try to put the person in the back of my mind, and we arrive in town. I do end up taking the final, and Alexis looks after the dog. Finally, after I was done and we have dinner, it was time to head back. It was a warmer night than usual. It was in the mid-30s, which was perfect for us. We drive on over to my property and make it back at around 9 p.m. I invited her to watch a movie, and so she ended up staying a little bit longer. We had some hot chocolate and we just sat there. While we sat there peacefully, Alexis got up to put the cups in the sink. Suddenly, she returns to the living room, and she has a concerned look on her face. Hey, Alexis, is something wrong? You look like you just saw something. I did see something. Come on over to the kitchen and look out the window. Tell me I'm not the only one that sees that. I was curious on what she was talking about, and with one quick look outside, we see what looks to be a light. That's then followed by somebody in a dark hoodie. We keep looking, and now it appears to be somebody walking around in the snow. I wasn't sure who they were, but they were on my property. I was about to go outside to confront the person, but before I do, I hear the sound of a loud pop. Instantly, I was able to tell what they had on them. Harold was surprised by that, but surprisingly, he didn't start barking. I thought if this person was out there, he was most likely going to try and get inside the house. Against all logic, we ended up going out the back door and making our way into the woods to hide. Thankfully, in all that commotion, Harold behaved. Had he even barked once, he might have given away where we had gone. Obviously, we had no idea if there was anybody else out here, but we weren't about to stay in the house had he found a way inside. We start making our way down the road, and at the same time, Alexis is on the phone calling officers. We explained that someone might be trying to get inside the house, and they said they would send somebody soon. While she was on the phone, I called one of the nearby neighbors. They would pick us up at the end of the road. We meet up with my neighbor and wait for officers to arrive. They meet up with us and they tell us they'll go check out the area. After walking around, they actually found the person we had seen. He did make it inside the house, and he was hiding in one of the rooms. They took him away, of course, but it did take me a few days to want to return to staying back home. I stayed over at Alexis's house for a few days. Nothing else has happened, but I did wonder why he was out there to begin with. Living in the wilderness is nice, but sometimes there are those interesting experiences that you have to deal with. This was one of them. Number 3. This happened just a couple of weeks ago. I'm currently 16 years old, and I live in northern Michigan. I recently just moved here about 3 months ago, so I was still fairly new to the area. This area I was living in was pretty nice. Me and my family owned a large amount of land out here. Around us were miles of woods and wilderness. One cool thing about the location of my house was that there was a large lake behind us. Here you could find people that go swimming, people that are fishing, and people who are just on their boats. We get quite the interesting amount of people here, so it's not uncommon to find people that walk around here. On this one night, so much would change. As some background information, we do have a few neighbors, but they live further down the lake. In order to get here, you have to go down a road that goes through some woods. From there, you can reach a crossroads. One way goes deeper into the wilderness, the other way heads back into town. Now, on to the night in question. It was a Saturday night. I was working on a project for school. Even though the lake we live on is public, the area is closed off during the nighttime. Only people who lived in the area were allowed to be on the lake at nighttime. If you didn't have permission, you could get in trouble. This will be important to know later on. On this night, my parents and the nearby neighbors went into town to have a night out. I was left alone with our dog Jackson. My parents said that they'd be home at around 11 p.m. So, in the meantime, they ordered food for me and I worked on some homework. As me and Jackson sat in the living room, Jackson started whining and scratching the door. This was usually a sign that he had to go outside. So I got up and I take Jackson outside so he could do his business. Jackson was always full of energy, so he ends up going to his favorite spot that was a little ways into the woods. From there, I just follow him and then I wait. Once we start walking back to the house, I ended up noticing something. I see what looks to be a boat right next to my house. They had what appeared to be an old-fashioned lantern, too. I did find it weird because, as far as I knew, my neighbors were out with my parents. Nobody was supposed to be on the lake. I disregarded it and went back inside. From there, I called my parents and the neighbors, and I wanted to see if perhaps they had returned earlier. They told me that none of them were there. This was really turning out to be strange, but it would get worse. You see, from the kitchen window, you have a perfect view of the lake below you. I can now see that the boat was slowly approaching the shore. I had the lights off, so the people on the boat couldn't see me. Slowly, the boat comes to a stop, and I see two people slowly start making their way out. I couldn't really see too well, but it looked like they were wearing dark clothing. Another thing I noticed that sent me a chill was that they appeared to be each holding some sort of sharp blades. It was hard to tell due to the lighting, but I was pretty sure that's what they had on them. As they slowly started examining my house, I knew now they were up to no good. Here I am in the deep wilderness. I'm in this house with no neighbors or no mom and dad. Immediately I grab Jackson and we both go into our parents' upstairs room. That's where we hide. I get on the phone at that point, and I'm soon on the line with the dispatcher. I explain the situation to them. They tell me they'll send officers right away. As I waited there, I could hear the sounds of yelling outside. That was then followed by the sound of them trying to open the doors. In that moment, I thought they would seriously be making their way inside the house. I remember that I closed all the windows and the doors, so if they did manage to get inside, it would take them some time. Suddenly, I heard the sound of something crashing. I would later find out that they broke one of the windows. For some reason, I was guessing they had a change of heart, because soon I heard the sound of their boat engine turning on. I looked out the upstairs window, and now I see their boat is making their way down the lake and towards a river. This river then heads into the wilderness. Honestly, if you were going to try and find these people, it was going to be difficult. But seriously, I think the officers must have stopped for coffee and donuts, because by the time they arrived, those two had gotten away. I mean, if that was the case, they could have brought me some donuts. Anyways, they arrived and I explained the entire situation to them. They told me they would keep a lookout for them, and so I gave them a description of the two. Couldn't really see the boat too well, so I wasn't able to give them a good description. Sadly, our poor living room window was broken. I'm guessing they must have thought I called somebody, and that's when they decided to leave. When my parents got home, you can imagine their reaction to everything. They were just so surprised something like that would happen to us. I was more surprised that they still hadn't been found. Even though I didn't see the boat, there was one time when I was walking in the woods with Jackson. As we were walking around, I started being followed by two people in dark hoodies. I was unsure if they were related to the two from before. As soon as me and Jackson went back to our house, the two of them just seemed to run back into the woods. The other night, me and my mom saw two suspicious people that were walking around our property. My dad was out doing some work, so it was just me and my mom. Once again, we called officers, but they didn't find anyone. All they found were the muddy footprints on the front yard. Officers and park rangers have been searching the area, but so far, nothing has come up. We still haven't gotten any updates, nor have we seen those two again. Our neighbors have also been keeping a lookout, but as an update, we have installed cameras around our house. If anything happens, I'll be sure to update you all again. Number 4. So this story happened a couple of years ago on a random August day. Me and my friend Kathy decided to go camping in the wilderness. We had gone camping mainly due to boredom. You see, there wasn't much to do this summer vacation in our town, so we thought it was a perfect plan. We leave like normal, then make our way a few hours out of town. From there, we arrive at a campground area where many families were staying. Although it was nice to be around all these people, we had a different mindset. If we're going to go camping out here, we wanted to at least be away from everybody during the daytime. There was one area that the park rangers said that we weren't allowed to go to. It was supposed to be off limits. I wasn't sure why, but they just said something about the trail being hard to follow. We of course were even more curious now. Regardless, we decided that we would go check it out later in the afternoon. We set up our campsite among some other families, and we spent the first half of the day just relaxing and talking to others. At around 7 p.m. in the afternoon, me and Kathy decided that we wanted to go to the so-called off-limits area for ourselves. Park rangers normally drive around the area every once in a while, so we waited until nobody was paying attention, and then started making our way over to the trail. One of the neighboring campers wanted to know where we were going. We told them that we were going to the nearby lake. It was obviously a lie. We then walked down this normal trail for about half a mile until we reached the crossroads. One trail goes to the lake, the other goes to the closed-off area. We looked around just to make sure nobody else was there. Then we make our way over the barrier. Right from the start, we felt what we were doing was already a bad idea, but we still ignored these feelings. We make our way up this trail, and now we see why park rangers told us not to come out here. The trail, it wasn't exactly in the best condition. Also, there was a lot of overgrowth, so it was hard to walk through. We were almost considering going back, but we started to hear what sounded like water. As we continue on forward, we find a hidden river. It was awesome. We had no idea something like this was out here. I'm not even sure why anybody wouldn't want us out here. Maybe because it's in the middle of nowhere? Who knows? Me and Kathy take our shoes off and put our feet in the river. It was very refreshing after walking a couple of miles. We sat there for about 10 minutes, just talking and enjoying the time there, when all of a sudden, we hear the sound of what sounds like laughter. I'm not talking about laughter like you're laughing from a joke your friend told you. No, this was a laugh that sent you a chill. It sounded like a madman. That's the best way I could describe it. We tried to calm ourselves down by saying it was just the wind or some sort of animal, and eventually it did stop. Still, with that, it was enough to make us start making our way back. As we are returning, we can now hear the sound of movement in the nearby woods. Again, assuming it was just some animal, we continued to walk. All of a sudden, I happen to look behind us, and I see that somebody was slowly following us. He looked old and had dirty clothing on. I froze on the inside because I saw he was holding a crowbar. I was sure he wasn't going to use it for any good. Me and Kathy take off running as there is this random person chasing us down this trail. We were yelling and trying to get somebody's attention, hoping somebody would hear us. I guess all the years of track and field had helped us with the endurance. This guy was pretty slow, so we did have the advantage. As we started nearing the entrance we had taken, we can see there's a park ranger vehicle heading our way. With that sight, the man turns around and heads back into the woods. It was a relief. We meet up with park rangers and they take us back to the campsite. Obviously, they weren't too happy with where we had gone. They ended up telling us that that area was private property. People apparently don't like it when you're out there. Yes, our curiosity got the best of us, but I'm just glad we got out of there all right. Number 5. Growing up in Wales, I lived in a town that was near some woods. I was 15 years old when this takes place, and it was back in the 1980s. These woods held many mysteries to them. No, it's not because of all the miles of endless trees. Well, it could be part of it. No, it's because there were certain areas that had many old abandoned buildings and areas that were off limits. Something else we did have was an old hospital that was still running. I always did find it strange, but I never did question it. The only thing I knew was that there had been a lot of passings in those woods. In the past, people have escaped the nearby hospital. Officers normally take care of all of that. With that background information out of the way, you can see why my encounter in the deep wilderness was that much more eerie. My parents worked long hours, so they were almost never home. I decided that one day out of boredom, I would take my dog William with me, and we would go into some nearby woods. With me, I brought my backpack and the usual supplies. We proceeded to have a great time. I did see the areas that were off limits, and me and William made sure to avoid those areas. I was more interested with a lake. That's where people would go swimming and have picnics with their families. We went there and spent the majority of the daytime with other families. Once it was nearing sunset, me and William started making our way back home. Going back down the familiar trail in the wilderness, especially later in the afternoon, did always make me a little bit more cautious. But I did have William with me, so I wasn't worrying too much. Seemingly out of nowhere, William started whining, then growling. I did find it strange, but I wasn't sure why he was doing it. We continued to walk for another couple of minutes, and I started hearing the sound of mumbling. Now I knew we weren't the only ones out there. I looked around, and instantly, I see a very tall person. I wouldn't say he was that old. He actually looked to be like a teenager. I think with all the lighting and since he was tall, it made him look older. He appeared to be wearing some sort of hospital clothing. I tried to rationalize everything and figured that he was just a patient from the nearby hospital. Who knows, maybe he was just enjoying a peaceful nature walk. When I really started thinking about it, I thought otherwise. All of a sudden, he started chasing me, and that's when me and William started to run. I could tell the poor guy wasn't all there, and looking back, I did feel bad for him. But in that moment, I wasn't sure what to think. We keep on running as I can hear all these different sounds he was making. Eventually, he gave up interest, and I did make it back home. Immediately, I called officers and I explained the situation. They thanked me for it, but I was confused as to why. They told me that somebody had actually gotten out of the hospital. They'd been spending the last couple of hours trying to find him. In the end, I never did hear more about him, and I never did look into it more. Soon after that, me and my family ended up moving. Number 6. Last week, my girlfriend and I wanted to go on a weekend backpacking trip. Our plan was to go into some nearby canyons. That's where we could go camping, and also take the opportunity to explore. These canyons actually connected into a state park. We were more interested in the area with the view of the entire valley below us. When we arrived, we parked our car in the familiar parking area, then started making our way up the various trails. It should be noted that many people do come out here and go camping, but for some strange reason, we only saw one other vehicle parked there. It was late in September, so it could have just been that the season for camping was over. We didn't want to go when it was warm, so that's why we waited to go until now. That first day we got there, nothing out of the ordinary happened. That was until later at night. After we had set up camp and started to relax for the night, we head inside the tent to try and get some sleep. I was tired from all the walking we had done, but suddenly I was awoken by my girlfriend. I was confused as to what she wanted, but she told me she heard the sounds of people walking around her campsite. She told me that she even saw light too. Though it had nothing to do with what we encountered later on, it did make us a little bit nervous. This is especially considering that we hadn't seen anybody that entire day. Day 2, we actually cut our trip short because it had actually started to rain. We didn't want to stay out here because if it got really bad, it could have been a problem. Although we did come prepared for the rain, we didn't think it was going to get this bad. We ended up finding a natural cover below a large tree. From there, we threw a tarp over us and we waited for the rain. Once everything seemed to have settled down, we started making our way back to the car. We had large backpacks with us, and though we've trained with them, it was still hard to get around. Thankfully for us, we had the option of walking down a road that wasn't dirt. There was pavement. This was mainly used by the park rangers and others who needed to get around the park. It was definitely a relief, and it did offer us a break from all the walking in the mud. Actually, we've walked down this road before. You see, it circles back down to the parking area. That relief would soon turn out to be the complete opposite. Soon, we start hearing what sounds like movement in the nearby woods. Now, this noise didn't sound like it belonged to a person. Instead, it sounded like some sort of animal. Let me just tell you right now, the series of events that happened next made me so thankful for being in the right place at the right time. Out of nowhere, we see 2 bear cubs walking out of the trees. They were cute, don't get me wrong, but what we see next sends us chills. We saw 2 large bears not too far off. Our immediate thought was that these were the parents. If there is one thing we know, it's you don't go near baby bears, especially when the parents are around. Immediately we froze. We were hoping the little baby bears wouldn't come any closer. Of course, they started walking towards us. We were unsure of what to do. If we start running, that might startle them. If that happens, the parents might get angry. We were both hungry at this point, but we sure didn't want to be on their dinner plate. Seemingly out of nowhere, we hear what sounds like a vehicle approaching us. That was soon confirmed by headlights. With that, the 2 bear cubs run back to their parents. Just so happened that park rangers were driving around there. Thankfully for us, Mama Bear and Papa Bear didn't attack us. The park rangers meet up with us and soon we're going back to the parking. They told us that we were in the right place at the right time. As it so turns out, somebody was almost attacked by a mama bear about a month ago. That story definitely made our encounter that much more concerning. In the end, we were just happy we made it out all right. Number 7. This happened when I was 17 years old. At the time, I was really into sports and was actually on the track and field team. I just so happened to live in Wyoming, by the way. Obviously, when you're on track and field, one of your many requirements was to go running at least once a day. Normally, we do our running in a group, but on some days you're usually required to go on your own. It just so happened that on this day I decided to go training. I would be the one to have this experience. My team and I go training in some nearby mountains. It's funny, one minute you're in town with all these cars and people, and the next thing you knew, you were out here in the deep wilderness, surrounded by nature everywhere. The isolation of this place is what's going to make this encounter that much more eerie. I began my normal routine of stretching at the bottom of the trail and then making my way up. Everything was going well for the most part and nothing seemed wrong. That was until I reached a bridge area that I had to cross to get to the other side. As I was approaching, I could see somebody sat in the middle. I hadn't seen anyone as of yet, but I did notice this person. Instantly, I recognized him. Me and my group have actually encountered this stranger before. For the most part, he has left us alone, but there was something about him that I found weird. I'm not sure if it was the way he looked at us or the things he said to us while we were running, but I should have turned back right there and then. Instead, I decided to take my chances. As I'm getting closer, I notice as he put his leg out, almost as to trip me. I jump over, but as I do so, I hadn't noticed that in that moment he quickly got up. In that moment he also tried to grab my arm. I was able to pull away just in time. I was too fast for him, and I think even he realized it because he didn't chase me. Definitely concerning, but it was about to get worse. From this point on, I kept my earphones out of my ears. I wanted to be more aware of my surroundings. I wasn't going to allow that guy to ruin my training, though, so I continued on. I did see another group of people walking out here, and I should have explained to them what had happened, but for some reason I never did. After a quick little break, I now take another trail that goes down the mountain. Unfortunately, I still had to go underneath that bridge. From there, I can go down to the parking area. I was still thinking about the man from earlier, but I remembered that he was above me on the bridge. In the time I'd been gone, I didn't know that he would be hiding in the shadows underneath the bridge. I hadn't noticed anything as I approached. In the few seconds I was down there, I noticed movement. That was followed by the shadow of somebody getting up. I take one look next to me. It's the same familiar face from before. He starts running after me. This time, he's making more of an effort than last time. Though I was already tired, I think in that moment, my adrenaline gave me enough energy to get away from him. While he was following me, he kept saying things like, "Wait for me, precious. Don't you want to play together?" Yeah, no thank you. Eventually I get to my car, but of course I dropped my keys as my hands were shaking. While I got down to get them, the man was now catching up. I grabbed the keys, opened the door, and I got inside. By the time he was able to catch up to me, I'd already locked the doors. He then started knocking on the windows and telling me to let him inside. With that, I got out of there and drove away. I did report the incident, but after that happened, neither myself or my team have seen him since. Number 8. This happened just last night. It's a short story, but I still wanted to share it. Since it's so fresh in my mind, I thought I would tell you all about it. I'm currently 28 years old, and I live in a rural town in Arizona that's pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Out here, there's a lot of nature reserves and farmlands. One day, I invited my cousin Dorothy over, and we would go fishing one late afternoon. There was a river that wasn't too far away from my house. That's where we would go quite often. This afternoon was like any other. We grabbed our things, and we headed over to the river at around 6 p.m. It was about 20 minutes down a trail, and soon enough you would arrive. Once there, we sat down next to the water, and we proceeded to do some fishing. We had brought some food and a little radio with us as well. In the end, we actually ended up staying out there a little bit longer than we expected. By now, the few people we had seen had already left. Now, it was just me and Dorothy remaining. It was now about 9 p.m. With there being only light from our phones and the stars above us, it was now time to head back. During our walk back through this little bit of wilderness, there was no noise whatsoever. Here's where I would like to get an explanation. As we were walking, the noise we had heard from earlier had suddenly just stopped. The wind we had heard, the crickets and other little animal noises we were hearing, they seemed to have stopped just like that. There was this cool breeze in the air that suddenly picked up out of nowhere. We found it weird, but what was even stranger was the smell of iron. This was then followed by what sounded like somebody was mimicking our laughter from earlier. It was in that moment that me and my cousin started sweating from the obvious mysterious noises. We took this opportunity to pick up our pace, and that's when we saw it. In the faraway tree line, we can see what looks to be a woman with long hair. Perhaps someone that was just walking around the woods? Possibly. But as far as I knew, I don't think any normal person walks around the woods at night. And this is especially without some sort of light source. Me and my cousin are now in full-on run back to the house. While doing so, we can hear the sounds of running in the woods. We do make it out of there and we're soon back at the house. Once inside, we make sure to lock everything up. I happened to look out the window. At the very far end of my property, I can see what looks to be somebody walking around in the woods. It was hard to tell, but it definitely did seem like somebody else was out there. Now, I've heard many stories and legends about this area, but I never did believe any of them. Perhaps this experience opened up our minds a little bit. I did talk to some neighbors that live farther away, but they told me they weren't out that late. I don't know. What do you think we experienced? It sure would be nice to get some insight. Thanks. Number 9. When I was 17 years old, me and my little sister decided to go camping into the woods. My sister was 14 years old at the time. This was back in the early 1990s, and my family and myself were living in Australia. We'd actually gone camping out in the woods before, but it was usually with our parents or other family. This would be the first time that we'd be allowed to go on our own. It had been raining most of that week, so we couldn't actually go when we had planned to. We had to wait an entire week for the trails to dry before we could end up going. Our parents trusted us, so we thought we wouldn't have any problems. Finally, on a Friday afternoon, our parents take us to a nearby campground area. That's where they would pick us up a few days later. We checked in at the cabin where park rangers were, and they explained everything to us. They told us the normal, what areas to avoid, where to go if we needed help, etc., etc. With that, our parents left me and my little sister to settle in. See, even though we were going camping, we were staying in these fairgrounds where other campers and cabins were. Still, that wouldn't mean we wouldn't have an encounter in the deep wilderness. The first night we spent there at the campgrounds was mostly uneventful. The only exciting thing that happened was there was a bear in the area. The park rangers told everybody over the intercom to go inside their cabins and lock all the doors and windows. It was a little concerning at first, but the bear did eventually leave. In their entire history, they told us it was the first time it happened. I guess there was a first time for everything. That was one thing that happened, but something else that happened really got to me and my sister. Once we woke up in the morning, we had breakfast. Once we did, we went out for the entirety of the day. We ended up going further into the wilderness than we expected, and ended up staying there until around sunset. In all of our exploration and excitement, we ended up walking in a little further than we expected. By now, it was getting pretty late, and we were way too tired to go back to the campsite. Luckily for us, we had brought our backpacks and some supplies. We ended up spending the night out here in the woods. Let's just say that night would turn into a nightmare. We settled into our spot behind some trees, and we tried to get some sleep. Everything was going all right for the most part, but that's until I was awoken by a noise. I checked my watch, and it was about 4 in the morning. Instantly, I started remembering the bear from the other day, and I started to sweat thinking about it. This wasn't what it was. In the distance, I could see what looked to be 2 suspicious people. Each person appeared to be holding these old-fashioned lanterns. From what little lighting they had on them, they each appeared to be holding something. They looked like axes, the ones you use to get firewood, but I couldn't tell to be exact. My sister now woke up, and I explained to her what I had seen. The look on her face told everything. As I turned around again, they are now walking towards us. We froze. We had no idea who they were and what they were planning. Where me and my sister were located, unless you were right at level with us, you actually wouldn't be able to see us too well. We actually had one of those camouflage tarps over us. Unless you were really looking for us, you wouldn't have seen anything. Honestly, we were just hoping they wouldn't find us. As the footsteps got louder and louder, we start hearing them talking. I hear them say something that instantly made me realize what was going on. I know I saw those 2 kids around here. They have to be here. Come on, let's keep looking. These 2 were up to no good. We couldn't just take off running just like that, though. We're out here in the deep wilderness, at least 10 miles away from the campgrounds. See, I didn't explain this part, but where we had gone, well, it was sort of off limits. The park didn't own this part of the land, and it was separated by a large river. You had to get across a bridge in order to get over here. This is where we were. At this point, they are literally inches away from our spot. We can see the boots they were wearing as they're searching around us. Meanwhile, me and my sister are trying to be as quiet as possible. We sat there for what felt like an eternity, and that's when one of them says, "I guess we thought wrong. Alright, well, there's nobody out here. Come on, let's go back." With that, we now heard as they started walking away from us. We waited there for what seemed like half an hour, and that's until we no longer heard anything. With the cover of the night, we carefully checked around us to make sure they weren't there. Once we had seen nobody was around us, we make a run for it. The entire time I kept thinking in my mind that these two might jump out from behind the trees. It was truly like we were in a bad dream. We did make it out of there after a couple of hours, and we did return back to the fairgrounds at around 6 in the morning. Looking back, we should have told park rangers about what happened. Obviously, we were more concerned in getting in trouble. After all, we were in an area we weren't supposed to be in. We ended up moving far away after that, and I only remembered it because me and my sister were recounting the story. "Wait, you never heard about what happened out there, brother?" "Yeah, some people went missing out there. They never did find them." I was able to put two and two together, and pretty much I came up with the idea that those two we had encountered may have been the ones responsible. Who knows? Number 10. This happened back when I was 16 years old. I'm now 19, so this puts the event back about 3 years ago. At the time, I was living in a small town in England. This was during a time when my high school would hold camps during the summertime. I was actually not going to go this year, but my friends convinced me to go. So this summer, I spent many of my months out in the deep wilderness. In the years I'd gone out there, we've experienced some interesting things. These mainly had to do with wild animals, and not so much people. Since the area belonged to the school, you would normally only find students. That or you'd find staff and even park rangers. Up further into the mountains was an area that didn't belong to this school. It was a public area where anybody could go camping or exploring. We were told to stay in our camping area, but that of course didn't stop students from going off on their own. We had been out to those areas before, but it was mainly with a camp counselor or a teacher. On this warm summer day, it was a free day. We were allowed to do what we wanted, as long as we returned by a certain time. Fair enough, this allowed my friends Edward, Thomas, and myself to go exploring into the nearby woods. We were always the brave ones who went on all these adventures out here. We did get in trouble one time because we didn't return at the time we were supposed to return at. They got mad mainly because the responsibility falls on them. If something were to happen to us, they were the ones that got in trouble. Anyways, we start our walk and go through miles of woods and wilderness. We did see the familiar spots we encountered from before, but eventually we reached an area that we were very unfamiliar with. We'd almost considered going back, but we still had plenty of sunlight left, so why not? At this point in the woods, we no longer heard the sounds of laughter and commotion from the other students. Out here, it was eerily quiet. The air was still. You could tell that this area wasn't really traveled much. We were actually startled by the sounds we had heard, but we quickly dismissed them as our own footsteps. Thomas points out that he thought he saw a shadow of somebody tall, but once again we just decided it was nothing. Soon enough, we reached this fenced-in area. On the other side, we can see what looks to be an abandoned recycling place. We saw a bunch of old cars and other containers too. Thinking about it now, there was a recycling plant that wasn't too far away, so it could just be that this area was no longer used. We were pretty fascinated by everything and we make our way inside. Our curiosity would get the best of us. As we're walking around, we take in the sights. We take pictures, we find any neat souvenirs we can find, and all in all, we enjoy our time. Suddenly, we heard what sounded like something falling over. Immediately, we froze. I thought one of my friends had tripped over something, but instead, it sounded like a car door was closing. We looked everywhere, but we saw nothing. That was enough to make us leave. As we're making our way out, we become aware that we're no longer alone out here. Out walked two people who looked like they'd been living here. They were each holding what looked to be sharp tools, ones you would find in a recycling area like this. We had to crawl underneath this fence in order to get inside, so we were more worried that we wouldn't have enough time to get out. Quickly, we make our way to the other side, half expecting others to jump out. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. We find a small container to hide in, and we wait there on the other side. Our plan was for them to be far away from the place we had entered. That way, we would have enough time to get out. Thankfully, we didn't have to do that. We actually saw that there was another entrance you could jump over. That's exactly what we did. We make our way over and leave without second guessing. We did get in trouble again for being out so late, but this time we told them what happened. They were disappointed with us, saying that that area has activity with people. They didn't go further into what sort of activity, but I could just imagine. There were signs saying not to go out there for a reason. Next time, we'll make sure to read them. Well, hey there. Thank you so much for watching and listening to today's stories. I hope you enjoyed them. As always, if you'd like to see more, then make sure you stay tuned. I've got plenty of more exciting stories and adventures to tell you. I'm sure you won't want to miss any of them. Remember, if you have a story you'd like to submit, then make sure you send it my way. I would love to check it out. But with that said and done, I hope you have yourself an amazing day, and I'll see you next time. Take care.